Welcome back to Top 5 Repairs. If your rear defroster is not working, I'm going to show you guys how to test it. If the rear defroster is not working, first make sure that the rear defroster button is working. When you press the button, the light should light up. If the light is not turning on, then check for a blown defroster fuse. For the first test, you're going to need a test light. We're going to check for power going to the grid lines on the rear window. Take your test light and connect it to ground. Take your test light and start touching each grid line. There should be power for each grid line. Make sure to lightly touch the grid line because you do not want to scratch it and destroy the grid line, because this will definitely cause an open and that grid line will not work. If one of the grid line is not receiving power and the test light is not lighting up when you touch the grid line, most likely there is an open. And just to be sure, we're going to use a multimeter and we're going to set it to ohms and we're going to check for resistance. Take your multimeter and set it to ohms. I like to set it at 20K, but you can use that at any different setting if you like. Take your positive and negative test lead and touch it together. Make sure your multimeter shows 0. That means there is continuity. Take your positive test lead and touch it on one end of the grid line. Take your negative test lead and touch it on the other end of the grid line. If the grid line is good, your multimeter should show 0. That means there is continuity. If the multimeter is showing 0, again, make sure to test your test lead because sometimes the test lead can become loose. Now test each grid line. Again, it should show 0. 0 means there is continuity and that grid line is good. So make sure to test each grid lines. And again, when you're testing each grid line, make sure to not scratch the grid line, because if you scratch the grid line, again, this can cause an open and that grid line will not work and your multimeter will not show 0. If none of the grid lines are receiving power and you have good fuse and your rear defroster button is working, most likely your grid line mounting tab is broken. So that is the grid line mounting tab. As you can see, that mounting tab is rusted and eventually this mounting tab will break and this will definitely cause an open. While you're inspecting the mounting tab, also make sure the connection is not loose. If one of the grid line is not working, you can always buy a grid line repair kit and it can be found on Amazon. They run for about $20. I hope you found this video useful. As I'll thank you for watching and subscribe to Top 5 Repairs.